Good day, Kabibal, and welcome to our Facebook Live learning session. For the discussion this morning, our topic will be getting to know each other, how teachers can creatively facilitate knowing their learners. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your question in the comment box allotted during the session, and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAsOnePH as our official hashtag to our Fibal webinars. Experience learning, Kabibal. And now to proceed with our webinar this morning, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker. Miss Antonette Bunag, PIID, is a graduated from University of Santo Tomas with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Interior Design in 2005. Soon after, she worked in an architectural firm and then ventured out on commercial spaces. A practicing interior designer since 2006, her experience ranges from retail design and visual merchandising, and her keen taste for design. She has served companies such as Trod and Diesel Shoes Philippines. She is currently the design head of Everfit Holding Company and handles the store design for Giordano, NBA Store Philippines, and New Era. In 2010, Antoinette once again entered the University of Santo Tomas, but this time teaching the university's design enthusiasts, while also continuing to learn through pursuing a master's degree at the University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome interior designer Antoinette Bunag.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very honored to be part of this live session. So let's get to our topic proper. I'll share my screen. So again, good morning, everyone. Today's topic is all about getting to know each other, how teachers can creatively facilitate knowing their learners. This is the outline for today's discussion. First, what are the learners like, or what are the learners of today? Creating meaningful learning, some of the best practices for online courses, and my personal experiences and some tips. Hello again, I'm Antonette Bunag, an interior designer, faculty member from the College of Fine Arts and Design, University of Santo Tomas. So, what are today's learners like? Who are they? Today's learners, I must say, are electronically engaged, mostly are staying at home because of the pandemic and working in online classes, have good networking skills, are very career driven, are very visual, self-aware, and I believe are very hardworking individuals. Now, let's take a look at the skill sets and attributes of today's learners. So they are expected to be effective oral and written communication skills, have collaborative skills, agility and adaptability, resilient, empathetic, are visionaries, self-regulated, hopeful and very positive, curious and imaginative, have initiative and entrepreneurial skills, are critical thinkers and problem solvers. With this expected skill sets, 21st century learners are required to have a very different skill set compared to the learners of the past. With these expected skill sets and attributes, education should be more on the ways of thinking, which involves creative and critical approaches to problem solving, decision making, and emphasizing learning. Education should also introduce ways of working through communicating and collaborating, as well as refines tools for working. These include information literacy and ICT literacy. Last but not the least, students need to develop skills as an active and engaged citizen with personal and social responsibility. Nowadays, educators are challenged to provide all this learning in this time of COVID-19 pandemic. So let's look at the scenario in today's online classes. So parents ask their children, what did you do during your recent online course? I fell asleep. I was playing an online game. I was watching TV. I was chatting with friends on social media. I haven't seen the last three lectures. These are some of the answers from student feedback. On the basis of these answers, one has to wonder, were the students learning anything in the online classes? So my answer to this, my dear colleagues and parents, is to create meaningful learning. So therefore, what is meaningful learning? So meaningful learning is to feel that all the pieces of a concept, idea, theory, formula, or argument fit together. Meaningful learning is all about students being willfully engaged in a meaningful task rather than providing their inert knowledge on a test. In other words, meaningful learning tasks should engage active, constructive, intentional, authentic, and cooperative activities. Just as various leadership studies speak to the need to make work meaningful, learning that is meaningful gets remembered. So we can ask ourselves, how much do I remember from the last training, workshop, or class I participated in? And what percentage of that information do I really remember? Can I use it effectively? As an educator or a trainer, we would like to answer to these questions to be as high as possible. To achieve this, our fundamental belief about what learning is must be reflective of the function of learning in the human brain. As Ted Son simply puts it, if you don't remember it, you haven't learned it. And if you can't use it, you have not developed the skills associated with it. To learn, you would need to translate the information into relatively permanent knowledge that you can draw on and start to develop the skills effectively to apply that knowledge. So, to make learning meaningful, let's start with a student inventory. So, it contains personal goals, core values, and interests gathered and made available to the educator. So therefore, we really need to get to know our students. So as an educator in the College of Fine Arts and Design, I know that my students are very visual. Therefore, photos should be integrated to the slides that I prepare and provide them with stimulating images for critical thinking and observation. So I've researched some of the best practices for online learning that I have applied last midterm. So these are some of the best practices that actually worked for me. So I hope if you tried it, it also works for you guys. So the first one is that lectures should last 18 minutes or less. I know this is kind of hard for everyone, but imagine someone talking for an hour or more than. It's hard work for the educators, but for the students, most of it won't be remembered. So it's important that we process our slides and lectures that we give to our students because most of them won't remember it. Next is to create meaningful learning. Well, teaching should be more about helping students recognize and solve problems, comprehend new phenomena, comprehend mental models of this phenomena, and set goals and regulate their own learning in a situation. Third is to design engaging activities. Adapting them to the online environment calls for some creativity and understanding of the technologies being used. Most of the virtual tools being used have functions such as creating groups, making a quick poll, and a shared whiteboard. I usually do this in the middle of my classes or during the discussion to get the attention of my students and to engage them to participate. Sometimes I will just ask questions or just pop up a poll asking them, do you want the submission to be on this date? Just a yes or no question will do. It can steer their stances and know that they should pay attention to the discussion. Fourth is to use effectively the Socratic methods. So using engaging questions enhances learning and accesses a sense of authentic care. By authentic care, it's meant that when asking questions to engage students, open-ended questions that connect to the students' interests and goals are powerful. In an online environment, this can be done by using discussion forums where each individual student gets to participate. The online environment is the perfect place to practice effective use of Socratic method since online environments use a discussion forum. As educators, it is important to read student posts. They can practice by thinking through the questions and writing them in response posts to set the engagement level. So we can ask questions such as, what are the significance? How is this relevant to you as a student or as a designer or as a design student? So now I'll be sharing some personal tips and experiences. Personal experiences and tips. I was fortunate last middle term, or actually call it special term, to have been given a teaching load. I would like to share my experiences then as how I conducted my online classes. It was not so great at first, but I learned how to adapt. And I know everyone is having a hard time with adjusting with the new norm. So these are some of my personal experiences and tips. First one is to create mini lessons with active learning research. So please, let's not replicate schools. 4 hours in school is not the same as 4 hours in a video call. Video calls can be so draining. So online fatigue is real. Connected learning and social activities, collaboration must be set in place. We must make students active learners by giving them tasks in which they manipulate the objects and parameters of the environment and observe the results of their manipulation. We can assign collaborative tasks and assess students as groups rather than on an individual basis, as people naturally seek out the opinions and ideas of others. We also know that students learn from their classmates. So I'm sure most of our students misses their classmates, and it's important that we give them social activities to make them feel better and help them ease out the feeling of sadness of not seeing their classmates from a very long time. This is also stimulating the real world, the real profession when they get to connect not with their friends but with their other classmates that they are not comfortable with. Second is to have low-tech learning and asynchronous activities. So how students construct responses that have students construct responses that articulate what they have accomplished and reflect on their activities observations. This can be done through journaling, creating, crafting, collaging, drawing, collecting data, storytelling, observing, and interviewing. Content analysis and case studies can also be considered. So primarily, as a fine arts and design faculty, we dwell most of our activities from low-tech learning and asynchronous activities nowadays. We usually have very long hours of studio classes, but of course, most of this can be done in asynchronous activities. Third is transparent teaching and learning framework. So let's not change our expectations. Let's change our approaches. Maintain high expectations for all learners, but understand that our students are struggling more than ever. Students will need extra support and flexible deadlines rather than consequences. So it's important to extend compassion and focus on building relationships and respect with each other. So let's avoid and abandon surveillance and control tools, meaning let's not be too strict or like a surveillance camera, when we conduct our online classes. So without being able to look over students' shoulders, you might want to turn to tools that will allow you to see and control what students are doing on their screens. Instead, focus on building trust relationships and respect. So we are all having problems with our connections, not just our students. I actually experienced getting disconnected from my class. So it actually happens to all of us. So it's important for us to extend compassion, and some of the students will be having a difficult time, or will not won't be able to attend synchronous activity. So let's extend compassion and understanding to our students, and it's important to always look after their welfare. We have given an order to look out for our students if they're not in the synchronous classes. We can ask them what happened through their classmates, or message them personally. So moving on, I'd like to share some of the low-tech learning and asynchronous activities that I've done with my students. I'm a firm believer of the capacity and talent of my students. I'm always in awe of the output that they submit on our activities. So sample A is an example of a window display done manually. Manually meaning my student did it by hand. Um, he added some collaging, did some collage for better presentation. And there's also some brief explanation of what the idea is all about. Then on the other example, B, I asked my students to make a scaled model. It's like a tableau. So I was surprised when my student did a video of how she did the entire project. So from beginning to the end, um, of course, as an educator, it makes us happy to see how creative our students are and how they are coping in this time of pandemic. So other examples for low-tech learning and asynchronous activities. So I've asked my students here in sample C to make some collage. So this collage is a study of exploring design principles. Mainly with fine arts, we, especially in interior design, we are used to doing things manually by hand. So in this online class, students are engaged in new skills. So they are exploring digital formats on how to present their work. So it we are taking advantage of the situation that they try to explore new skills. And then for the next example, this one is very interesting. Example D. So my student did a digital model and a scaled model. So this one is actually an example of conceptualization of a design to execution. So conception design process from the drawing board to the actual sample. So the actual sample is a scaled model. So my student just had fun by placing himself in the scaled model. Then the last example, um, it's actually the first activity, sample E is the first activity that I asked my student. Um, I asked them to make a video of themselves. So I gave them a caption that says, "Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others, unfold your own myth." So the main brief for that activity is to introduce yourself. You need to describe your strengths and what made you interested in taking up the course, because I was teaching an elective course last term. So the students get to choose what courses they wanted to attend. So I was very surprised and happy to see the video activity. It's good to see and know your students from that perspective, how they are, how creative they are, showing their talents. It's very important for us educators to know our students. I did that exercise primarily so that students will be comfortable in front of the camera, since their next task is to provide or to do presentations, and I want them to be comfortable with the technology. So it's one exercise of making them comfortable in an online environment. So I would like to say to my fellow educators and to the parents as well, I want them to know that the struggle is real for the online courses. However, there are a lot of surprises. So I encourage everyone to just enjoy and stay positive. Enjoy the journey and stay positive. Many things can happen. So, you know, your pets can be um, interested in what you're doing as well. So I'd like to end my presentation with the wisdom from Ted Son. So at the end of the day, we all want to walk away from our educator role, knowing that students continue to learn and we as educators continue to be the hope that lights their future. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll proceed po to the question and answer po, no? From Yang Tanyag, can you give sample activities po for preschool to grade 3 learners?
Oh, sure. For me, it's important that students get to express themselves through drawings. So we can ask them activities to, for example, self-reflection. You can ask them to draw what they're feeling in a certain situation so that we can assess if they're still okay mentally. So for me, engaging them in things that they do with their hands, I think that's very important. Yung creativity, yung creative process nila, thought process and doing something. So it's either you let them draw, you let them color, you make them do things with their hands. So for example, clay or building something, or kahit ano lang, doing colors. That's important for preschoolers.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Next question po is from Miss Carol Alvarez. How can we set up our home or learning space that will motivate our children in their virtual class?
That's a very good question. As an interior designer, actually, we are looking at researches and how to improve, and we've been discussing that right now. Um, I know homes have different setups. They're not all the same, but the number one thing that you should do is to make sure that you have a private area for them to concentrate and a space wherein they can really do the activities without any distraction. That's why we are going back to spaces with partitions. Before kasi nauso yung open spaces eh. But now we're trying to look into having at least a small cubicle or a small area for the learners to be able to focus and concentrate kahit maliit lang. We're also researching and coming up with a certain standard for a space. I think one desk is enough for the student, pero at least kailangan may privacy siya. Hindi yung tipong dinadaan-daanan siya. Sana nasa enclosed area siya para makapag-concentrate siya. One of the suggestions that we are looking at is to have kahit temporary partitions na at least they are in a cubicle. Iba kasi yung feeling na you are in a space na um, may focus eh.
Thank you so much, ma'am. For our next question po is from Mr. Greg Rubiano. What would your advice to teachers who are not intrinsically creative or artistic? Can you recommend activities or strategies that can help them become more creative?
I think most of us are not born artists. For me, it takes practice to develop the skill. So that's why in fine arts, we have certain fundamentals in trying to develop your skill. So we believe naman na everyone can be good at that. Eh. So advice ko kay Sir Greg, you need to practice lang to try to start with shapes. Um, Most artists are like that. Eh. You need to look at drawing objects first. First are the shapes. So it takes practice to develop the skills.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Next question po is from Miss Glo Pranisa. How about on senior high school? What would be the best choice ways since we said they dwell more on games?
For high school students, I think they are more engaged with their classmates. So I guess more on collaborative activities, storytelling, journaling. I think most of them naman are outspoken with their feelings eh. So we can ask them to write, to do writing exercises. Um, Siguro include pa rin yung creative aspect eh. Design something, not really designing a space, 'di ba? Particularly kahit parang diagrams lang. But I think for high school students it's important yung to to look at how they're feeling. So journaling, storytelling, group activities, siguro yung mga plays. It can be done actually on videos eh. So it's good to engage them to that kasi mas expose sila sa ganung type of activities nowadays. And it can actually surprise us educators kung gaano sila kagaling na they exceed our expectations when it comes to asking them how to do certain activities or music.
And thank you so much, ma'am. We'll proceed to Miss Tiara Benson's question. Any tips po for journaling? I've always wanted to try it po kasi, pero I don't know how to start.
Okay. I remember this exercise that was that was given to us when I was in high school. We have a journaling book. So I think it's good to keep a journaling book for the students. So each students have their journaling book. you have, for example, you have an activity for today. For example, you have a content about social political issues. So, since they all have their own journals na hawak na ng student yon. So you can ask questions na what are their opinions, what are their stand on certain issues. So they will just write it on their journal. Tapos next topic naman. Tapos you need to get that. Kasi it's important for the students. Natutuwa sila kapag alam nila na binabasa ng prof na may comment eh. So that's one way of consistent journaling eh. Hindi lang siya one time. So you keep you ask students to have their own journal na dun lang sila nagsusulat, and then kukuhanin mo siya hindi naman every day, siguro meron kang you set a time on getting yung journals nila, pero para hindi mawala yung momentum, so they keep on writing lang kung ano yung thoughts nila. I think that's actually a good exercise for consistent journaling and getting yung mga ideas and opinions ng mga students natin.
Thank you so much, Ma'am. Next question po is from Miss Via Enzo. As a parent, how can we collaborate constructively in our learners' class activities more effectively? Thank you po.
Um, for parents, it depends kasi per year level. For lower levels, secondary siguro, or sa mga preschoolers, I know that parents can actually join in the session. But with the tertiary level, it's surprising din kasi na there are a lot of that parents that talk to us professors with regards to the status of their children. So for tertiary, I can only speak for tertiary level since I'm teaching in college. The parents can actually monitor by knowing yung platform na ginagamit ng students nila. Kasi anong mga anak nila. Kasi naka-post naman lahat ng mga activities. And they can actually inquire directly to the professors, lalo na if their sons or daughters are having difficult time or hard time doing the activities. But of course, we would like to get feedback from the parents because we're also trying to do collaborative teaching, especially with other subjects na isang output na lang tas tuhog-tuhog na with kasi we know naman that the students are really having a hard time doing all the activities at the same time, lalo na if it entails a lot of mga scaled modeling, yung medyo mabibigat na mga requirement. Alam namin na they're having hard time with that, so we're adjusting kasi the materials are also not available. So it's good to know yung mga feedback ng parents on how online classes are being done.
Thank you so much, Ma'am. Next question po is from Maria Escueta. What are the basic teaching materials that teachers can use to facilitate creative learning environment for their learners?
That's actually a good question din. Pagdating sa materials, since we're in an online environment, for me, lalo na if you have lots of classes na paulit-ulit lang, I really suggest that you record your lectures. And you keep it in a minimal time. And then you give them activities that they do for the rest of the class. So when it comes to materials, digital na kasi tayo ngayon. So, you should always put a lot of images, few texts because most of the students won't read that. Yung mga heavily text and you add video materials, but of course we have protocols for uploading video materials, di ba? So kailangan link ang nakalagay. Meron tayong ethics na sinusunod for that. So to be interactive and creative with them, so number one, yun nga, kailangan maraming visuals and then let let them observe and or we can provide guide questions for them to come up with analysis and then videos that we can research and look at different social media platforms na for education. It's important na sana for education yon, and then we provide them with the link and demonstrations. I think the demonstrations are the hardest part. We are actually trying it now kasi 'di ba nasa creative kami, fine arts. So when you're doing certain skills or showing them drawings or how this can be done manually. So, yung demonstrations, we are trying to videotape ourselves doing um, the activities na gusto namin sa kanila. So, um, ang hirap kasi hindi naman tayong educators trained sa ganon, 'di ba? But we do it for our students. So demonstrations through video sa sarili mo, you are actually doing the video. Yung demonstrations, I think yon ang pinakamahalaga for the students nowadays, that we prepare. Mahirap siya pero once you do it, definitely magbe-benefit siya ng mahaba for the students. Then of course, nandito yung challenge for educators that we have to upgrade and update ourselves, di ba? Na we try to break the traditional way of teaching eh. So ito na yung time na yun eh. It's hard because we are all adjusting, pero for our students, di ba, we need to do this. So I think those are some of the tips na will be helpful for us online educators. Though ang hirap niya and it will eat up a lot of our time, pero yung yung output naman nun, once you see how your students are doing, ano yun, the reward is very good. So yun, sana that can help you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Next question po is from Mr. Benedict Reyes. Any tips po on how to nurture our child's creativity?
Actually, to nurture creativity, I think it's important to develop yung kanilang yung visual attention nila um, for a certain object. Or we have to know their interest muna. And from there, um, we can come up with measures on how to develop that. So we can show them, for example, paintings. Saan ba sila interesado, for example? Kasi madaming ang creative eh. So pwedeng visual siya, painting siya. Mahilig siya sa pag-construct, pwedeng furniture design. Mahilig siya sa how things are being made or designed. So pwede siyang industrial designer. So we have to know muna kung ano yung saan siya interesado. And then from there, yung creativity niya, kasi madaming aspects ang pagiging creative eh. So from there, we can work on kung ano ba yung syempre for me, maganda sana that we get to bring them to places that will inspire them eh, 'di ba? For example, museums. But now I know we're in a pandemic and that's not gonna happen, but there are virtual museums nowadays na nakinikater yung mga tao that wants to see pa rin naman yung get a glimpse of what's inside the museum. Pero yun sana eh, kailangan muna ma-stimulate yung ano niya, yung interest, and then yung visual, kung ano yung gusto niyang creative, anong klaseng creative kasi madami siya. So, kailangan muna nating malaman kung ano yun. And then, we can let them watch videos and um, buy books or read mga biographies ng mga artists na ma-inspire sila. So I think that's a good start to get their interest on being creative. And syempre it will help if the parents will buy, for example, coloring materials dyan. I think most of the students will be, or learners will be excited with that, na meron silang mga gamit. Then, they can just be, experimental with it. Para hindi naman natin dinidictate kung anong, nila, di ba? Kung anong mga interest nila. So, maganda yung free-flowing na ma-develop sana yun.
Thank you so much, Mom. Next question po is from Miss Aloy L. Kibilan. For the modular learning, how can we expect them a presentation if they don't have the resources like gadgets with Wi-Fi, textbook they need to research from the library since they are not allowed to go to school yet?
Um, Actually, we as educators right now are developing our own modules because we need to come up with a more feasible material for the students. Of course, I cannot speak for how other schools are doing it, but we have strengthened our online library access. So most students have access online with the library. But to address yung issues ng alam ko that's really a big issue on how you can produce materials. But I know right now they're doing though it's taking really a huge delay for some schools to produce yung mga materials that they need to print and provide to the students. But I think with that, it's important to strengthen yung mga electronic resources for the children to access. Doon naman sa mga walang gadgets, I think teachers need to extend compassion again on how to maybe maybe the schools can provide materials for them. So it's siya, different approach. It can be pa rin naman low tech learning. So it's like siguro kailangan may modular na booklet that they answer, na nandun yung mga activities, tapos kinukuha na lang or ina-assess within a certain period. But of course need to be guided by the students. Just to share lang din siguro, I've actually heard of a mobile school. I just don't know if it's gonna work here. Kasi siguro yung professor, I think some professors are doing it, yung mga professors for the barriers. But yun nga, mobile school, yung professor mismo yung pumupunta dun sa mga bahay ng students to guide them. Siguro that will work on a very few students lang, learners, 'di ba? Kasi of course we need to practice social distancing. Siguro for lang yun, but those things can be manageable, I guess. Pero it's really hard to have a balance of how we are coping up with how to teach our learners, especially the educators, if there's issues of the materials or the modules.
Okay po, ma'am. Thank you po. For our next question is from Miss Vina Cortez. Mga ilan days po ang ideal na ibigay sa mga bata para sa kanilang projects? Example po, scale models, diorama.
Okay, for scaled models or diorama, that entails a lot of time. So, ang ginagawa namin mostly, it's a week long activity or 2 weeks, depends on how big it is. Pero really we give ample time for them to finish the project. And making sure na they have the materials, yun yung problema. Alam ko nowadays, lalo na nung nag-lockdown, um, kasi fine arts kami, so kailangan marami kaming gamit like tracing papers that you need to buy sa national bookstore. So the traditional ways have been cut off. So we went digital. So may other ways naman actually of of presenting a scaled model if there's a problem really with the materials. Pero with the time frame, at least a week or two, or maaga na siyang sinasabi, early on, pero for example, the submission will be during the finals or preliminary period. It can be like that. I think mas ideal yun for the students. More time for them to do the scaled models or dioramas.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Next po is from Miss Delia G. Flores. What can you advise to those teachers that are not yet keen in using different apps in making different visual aids, even video presentation and PowerPoint?
That's a good question actually. We've all been having that problems, especially those who are um, teaching ng sobrang tagal. Um, what we did are what we actually did is to provide with USD is to provide trainings. So we've been doing a lot of online trainings for us to be adept to the technology. So it needs again a lot of practice. So kailangan mo siyang matutunan forcefully. Unfortunately, forcefully kailangan talaga siyang matutunan ngayon. So since we are educators, 'di ba? We need to to embrace the challenge kasi it is needed. It takes time syempre to be good at what we're doing, pero syempre the rewards are good sa dulo. So really kailangan kailangan ng training online. And we explore on on the applications that we have. For example, PowerPoint. You can actually record your voice in PowerPoint. 'Di ba? If you look at if you research on it online, it will show you kung paano siya. So it will be easier for you to show or to provide discussions kasi na siya on record na eh. And then hindi siya masyadong mahaba kasi wala ka masyadong ad-lib, straight to the point yung sinasabi mo. So ang daming means actually, just need to explore kung paano siya. So kailangan natin magbigay ng time para matutunan at aralin yung mga new technology na nandyan lang na pwede naman nating i-explore and extend to the best of abilities or i-maximize natin para makapag-cope tayo sa ngayon kasi napakahirap talaga, especially for the professors or who are very traditional. Ang hirap talaga, and even processing yung lectures kasi some professors are really good in giving very lengthy lectures, pero yun nga nowadays most students don't remember that. So kailangan yun nga meaningful learning talaga. I actually learned that from my mentor. So that's why I shared it with you guys today na it's important that we process kung ano yung gusto nating ituro sa mga estudyante natin. Hindi kailangan na, 'di ba, we extend super lengthy hours and then hindi naman nila yun naiintindihan afterwards.
Thank you so much. And for our final question for this morning po is from Mr. Jep Jack. Artist learners have negative attitudes or moods. How can we deal with that po?
Um, I've always heard that na ganyan, na moody and everything. But at the end of the day, we need to have discipline. That's why we have deadlines sa lahat ng activities natin. Even artists, they have their own deadlines when they're doing their one man show. So it's important to have schedules and to have goals set in place. Um, for me, it's important na you know that you get things done, 'di ba? Maraming taong sobrang brilliant but they have the wrong attitude. Um, that's why they are having hard time with other clients. So we have to instill that's why we are always telling our students or reminding them of certain guidelines and goals for certain activities so that they have deadlines. Lahat naman tayo, we all have yung mga mood na parang ayaw mo magtrabaho or ayaw mong gumawa. Pero a deadline is a deadline. So kailangan i-instill natin sa mga estudyante natin yun na we need to be professional kasi we're dealing with other people. So it's it's your identity, 'di ba? As a person din and how you handle yourself when it comes sa mga ganun. So kailangan we instill to our students, lalo na mga artists, that we have deadlines and we respect the time of other people.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering the questions of our viewers, ma'am. So, any last reminders po to our viewers for today?
Um, Again, I know that this is a very difficult time. We educators are struggling and really even having a hard time dealing with this online requirements. We are revising our lesson plans to asynchronous and synchronous activities, but we must put the students first. Na if we are having a hard time, 3 times or 4 times na mas nahihirapan yung mga estudyante natin. So, we have to be more compassionate and understanding of their situation. So, we should extend ourselves to them, lalo na kasi we are in the pandemic. So, we need to ensure that learning should be fun and creative sa kanila. And then, not just to one student, di ba? But we have to reach as much students as we can. So, yung makikita kasi ng mga estudyante natin yung attitude natin towards them. So, let's ignite that torch of fire to encourage, inspire, and motivate our students to be the future leaders of um of their generation.
Okay, there we have it. In behalf of Wibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank you, Ma'am Antoinette, for being our speaker this morning and for giving us an insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today. And of course, all our Kabibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our Dirty Learning session. Next week ay magkita-kita po tayo ulit for another series. Muli maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat. Happy weekend everyone. Goodbye
Thank
po.
you. Bye.